Look at JD sitting there, thinking that he's the man. Not knowing Rob Your Blind's right there, right around the corner.
Love is in the air, I put on a gas mask.
Hello.
JD's just sitting there, lost in love, not even knowing he sat his cell phone down.
I can't believe it.
And just like that,
It's all mine.
and with his cell phone, he has access to
It was
everything.
too easy.
It looks like he gave it to Chance Wilder to do some hacking.
My plan is complete. I'll have it all.
And with your cell phone, he'll have your email, bank account information.
If you could just confirm your name and address.
Sergeant Be Safe, is that you?
Hi, JD. How are you?
I really need your help.
Okay, what happened? How can I help?
I laid my cell phone down and Rob You Blind stole it.
Oh, yeah, I heard you were lost in love at that Valentine's Day gala.
Chance Wilder used the information to steal my identity.
Well, that's unfortunate. Did you put a lock on all your personal information? If not, I suggest you do that now, and I'll do what I can.
Can you get it back?
I promise you I will do my best. Identity theft is something that is constantly on the rise. Make sure you protect yourself in all ways possible. Hey, get your hands up. You both are coming with me. You're under arrest for identity theft. Ooh. I'm Sergeant Be Safe. That's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Subscribe now.
Let's go, start the show.
Now.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to another episode of Black and Blue. I'm excited to have you here. I hope you guys are excited to be here as well. We got a tremendous show lined up for you today. We got a tremendous guest backstage. I'll introduce him in a minute. Some of you may know him, some of you may not, but we're going to learn a lot more about him and his story throughout the broadcast of this podcast. Get tongue-tied, sorry about that. This is Black and Blue. I'm Coach Clee. I'm your host. I'm your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker. This has been a transition from the lab where we interviewed people with businesses, products, and positive messages. Now we interview police officers, law enforcement officials throughout the nation and throughout the world who are rookie, seasoned, and experienced, whether they have their experiences, whether they wrote a book, whether they have put on trainings. We learn from them, we grow from them, we build with them, because all in all, we are human and we're humanizing the profession because it's very real. It's very understanding. We're trying to give you a total understanding of exactly what's going on in this world. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are streaming on 5 different platforms right now. We're on 2 on YouTube, we're streaming on 2 on Facebook, and we're 1 on LinkedIn, all under various names, variations of Clee Tillman or Coach Clee itself. Make sure you guys tag, like, share, subscribe to all of those. If you want a shout out, make sure you put your name and where you're from in the comment section, because I cannot see who's on here unless you actually put something in the comment section. If you have a question, because this is interactive, you got to put that in the comment section as well, and we're going to highlight and answer, get those questions answered as well. All right. Thank you guys for being here. We appreciate. We got workwithclee.com. If you're a guest and you want to be on the show, that's scrolling below my name, and it's also in the comment section. Make sure you click on that. Not right now, but make sure you click on that and check all those things out on there. One of those things that you will definitely see on there is one-way publishing. And if you haven't heard what one-way publishing is, it's a great thing. I've written 5 books myself. They're right behind me, and that's all through one-way publishing. And they have many, many more clients that had their dreams come true as well. One-way publishing, their motto is they turn a mere thought and turn it into a book that's bought. So if you have a thought, if you ever wanted to write your own book, you want to get that chapter of your life taken care of, contact One-Way Publishing. They can make that happen. And speaking of One-Way Publishing, not affiliated with One-Way Publishing, tomorrow at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, make sure you guys check out Reading 365 with American Literacy Corporation with Floyd Stokes, because Derek Dotson, who's going to be an upcoming guest that's going to be on the show, his children's book about police interaction is going to be read by me at 11 o'clock. So make sure you guys tune in. That's going to be on Facebook itself. All right. But One-Way Publishing, stick by. One-Way Publishing has a commercial. I hope you guys like it. Publishing. Have you ever wanted to explain something, tell a story, or leave a piece of you behind? Have you ever wanted to write your own book, but not specifically know how to do it? Well, get ready. One-Way Publishing's here. We can turn a mere thought into a book that's bought. People need to learn from you. They need to hear that story. Kids need to read that book. Imagine if you wrote your own children's book and get to read it to your kids. Here at One-Way Publishing, we can get your fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, instructional, what have you, done. All at a reasonable price and definitely a reasonable time frame. And if you don't believe me, ask Sergeant Be Safe. He's working on his right now. He's definitely writing the best chapter of his life. Make sure you check out his cartoon skits that air on the podcast Black and Blue.
As Sergeant Be Safe said, that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Welcome to One-Way Publishing. I'm Sergeant Be Safe, and over there you see Captain Chaos with the K9 Kraken. One-Way Publishing has great deals, so we're over here typing up our own books. Everyone has a story to tell, and who better to write the story of your life than you? Even if it's a fiction make-believe book, it can still get done. Here at One-Way Publishing, they pride themselves on turning a mere thought into a book that's bought. So Kraken, what do you think about that? Just imagine going to the bookstore and seeing the book that you wrote on the shelves. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way. Make sure you check out the website workwithclee.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I understand I got to make a correction. That reading is going to be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, not p.m., 11 a.m. So make sure you guys tune in, American Literacy Corporation. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of why you guys are here and why I'm here. I'm excited to bring to the stage. I'm excited to have him here on the live. This is going to be a very fun live. It's going to be very interactive. Make sure you guys get your paper and pencils ready because we're going to learn a lot. There's a lot to do and a lot to learn. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm going to bring Dr. Kareem Puranda to the stage. He's a former law enforcement officer who's went through extreme highs and extreme lows as well. And we're going to discuss that as well. Going through those extreme lows, it brought him to be the person that he is today. You know, sometimes you have to go through certain experiences to be formulated into the person that you are now. Right now, he is a licensed clinical mental health counselor. Mental health counselor, not medical correction. I'm sorry. And when he comes on here, correct me if I'm wrong. He's a counselor and he's an author of a book that I've already highlighted on my LinkedIn page. You know, Breaking the Code of Silence: A Cop's Journey to Triumph and Truth. And we're going to discuss that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, without further ado, I'm going to bring Kareem to the stage. Dr. Kareem Puranda, are you there?
I'm in the building. What's happening, Clee?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm good, man. I'm glad to have you. Like I said before, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, listen, I love that cartoon skit. Sergeant Be Safe is doing the Baltimore Shuffle. I said, get out of here.
Yeah, he got some moves, man. I'm telling you, Sergeant Be Safe is a 3D character, man. You got to learn about him.
That was nice, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate having you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. I am Dr. Kareem Puranda. Recently obtained my PhD in public policy and administration with a goal of supporting law enforcement reform as it relates to mental health for police officers. Born in Bronx, New York. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I got 4 children.
Okay.
Man, I'm a man who is a work in progress, man, still discovering my purpose, man, and working towards it.
Yeah, listen, man, you're still discovering your purpose. From my perspective and point of view, I think, and this is me talking, I think you've already discovered your purpose and you found your passion and you're helping others through the experiences that you've had, and you're helping make a better world for not only law enforcement, but people in general, especially with the amount of chaos that's going on in the world.
No doubt, man. I appreciate that, my brother, man. Just trying to be obedient, man, to it. You know, at this stage of the game, back in the day, wasn't that obedient, but you know, trial and errors definitely steered me towards the obedience that's needed now to be able to do the work that I'm doing, man. So I'm eternally thankful and grateful for the grace that I was given, man, to get to this point in my life.
Absolutely. I'm happy to have you. And before we start getting into the bulk of the conversation, just trying to get some foundational information out there to qualify who you are. What gave you the burning desire to actually wanting to get into law enforcement and become a law enforcement police officer in general?
Yeah, to be very honest, I remember when I was completing my undergrad at Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina. I did not know exactly what I wanted to do. I had 3 options. It was either going to be social work, teaching, or law enforcement. Now, you know, I grew up in the Bronx, and you know, I grew up in an environment that wasn't so delicate, and it was a jungle experience. What I call a jungle experience, meaning there were a lot of dangers and a lot of crime and things like that, and you had to either be a predator or prey. And I chose to be a predator because I didn't want to be preyed upon. And so you learn how to be cautious. You learn to live through survival mode, and you develop this ego to keep you safe in these undesirable environments. And so when I was thinking about graduating, or when I was approaching graduation, I was operating in my ego. I didn't want to do teaching because I didn't want to be boxed into a classroom. I didn't want to do social work because I thought that was a feminine profession at the time. And then law enforcement came across my mind, and I said, you know what? I can mentor kids and in total transparency, kick you know what while mentoring kids. All of that was ego based, and I said, you know what, law enforcement it is, because at least it aligns with my ego that I had at the time.
So therefore, it's funny how you didn't want to be trapped in the box as a teacher, and I say that because I've interviewed. I've been an SRO myself, and I interviewed a SRO in the schools, And reading your book, I know that you were in SRO too.
Yep.
And I know you took that job very seriously, and you kind of changed the game with certain things because you brought in new ways of thinking, challenged new things, and you, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were very successful in that role.
Extremely successful, man. And again, the ego steered me in a direction that was inconsistent with where I should have been going. And it's a wonderful lesson to learn. I would say that.
Absolutely. So coming up through the process, did you have any mentors or influences? I know while you were at, I forget the name of the first college that you were at, but then you transferred to Salisbury College. You met someone that's kind of influenced you to get into the police department itself. Did you have any other mentors or influencers to help you throughout the process?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't. The only solid mentor I came across was a professor who was actually the chief of police, the newly hired chief of police at the agency that I ended up working for. He was an African-American professor for a criminal justice class that I took, and he was extremely influential. And he was also a contributor to the decision of me wanting to go into law enforcement, because he was my first example of a Black person who had a level of power and status that I was unfamiliar with growing up where I grew up at. And so I really respected him and wanted to work under him or work for him, because I thought he was a great guy.
Gotcha. And so after applying and getting hired on with that department, tell us a little bit about some of your early experiences with the department. I know you're real excited, a young officer living off the adrenaline rush. And I know you like to work the more serious high crime districts of the area. Tell us a little bit about some of those experiences.
Yeah, I tell you, the culture of law enforcement was impressed upon me during the BLET process.
Okay.
My goal when I was going into the profession, number one, you got to understand, again, with this ego, I got to emphasize this, because this is oftentimes an unnoticed condition, especially if you come from an environment where there's a lot of trauma, violence, and things like that, where you have to guard yourself against threats, social, emotional, or physical threats. Okay. And so when I went into the academy, I had that ego there the entire time. It was normal to me to be guarded or by myself and standoffish and things like that. And fighting was one of my coping mechanisms. I used to have a bad anger issue. And when I became a therapist, I started studying this line of work. I discovered that people with the greatest anger have the greatest hurt. And then when I started exploring myself in terms of how could I be hurt when, anger is supposed to be like machoism. And so this is why the law enforcement thing, right? But I discovered that, I had my heart broken by my first love. I usually categorize it as this way. And then I would ask the audience, well, who do you think my first love was? And they're like, girlfriend or whatever it might be. I'm like, no, it was my dad. My dad wasn't available to me in my younger years. And that set off a belief system that says I wasn't as valuable, or I wasn't as worthy. And I found myself doing things that would be notable as worthy in whatever environment I was in, whether it be fighting, whether it be macking the girls, or being the top gun at the academy, or doing something that was going to get me an accolade. So when I was at the academy, I was all about pleasing the trainers and everybody else, and trying to be that guy to get value where I couldn't have value within. And so going through the academy, I was the what they call the graduation speaker. And so, I was getting a lot of accolades coming into the door, and that was just all ego. And when I went to field training, my field trainers told me, said, hey, forget everything you learned in the academy. We're going to show you real policing. This is back in the early 2000s when I got in 2002. And I didn't know what they was talking about, but my history, no one knew my history. No one knew that I liked to fight. And so they thought that because I was what you would call I graduated top of my class, they thought I was a book guy. And so the first thing they told me is that they want to get me into a fight. These are my FTOs now. All of them coordinating, like we're gonna go answer all the hot calls, any shots fired, any fights. We're gonna answer all those calls to see how you get down, rookie. And I said, okay, we'll see. So go through all the field training experiences, got into a bunch of chases. I felt in my mind was unreasonable, because I think the FTOs were just trying to create situations to see how I would respond in them. And it was in my final phase of FTO training, third shift. we got out with a broken down vehicle on the side of the road. Turns out the car was stolen, and the guy that was standing there, we were trying to assist him. My FTO was on the cell phone with his girlfriend talking while the call was coming back that the car or the tag was stolen. He tells me to hook him, and I'm like, hook him for what? I'm waiting for the record. Like, I'm lost. And so he says, hook him. This tag is, I think 1075 was the code. I go to grab him, the dude takes off, and we get into a sprint. I get him, and we get into a tussle, and use of force, my first use of force in field training, and I get celebrated because of the way I handled or responded in that particular situation.
Right.
After field training, Clee, this is the crazy thing, right? And this is where I get sort of kind of I have a bit of grief regarding like how I exited the profession, because early on in my career, I had a supervisor tell me that if you're not getting complaints, then you're not doing your job.
All right, I've heard that before too.
And so, I go into the neighborhoods where there's a lot of high crime, high poverty, and people don't like the police, especially if you Black. Oh man, I got called every name in the book by the folks who look like me, man. A traitor, a sellout, Uncle Tom. I mean, you name it. And I really went into that. I went into the community with a desire to help and really be the difference maker. But the community didn't allow me to, and I didn't realize that they were talking to my uniform and not necessarily me. But my ego said, "Oh, who you think you're talking to?" And
it's hard to separate the two. I understand. Yep.
And so there you have it, man. And my career, man. My first day out, my third day out of field training, I was on the road by myself. I got into my first high-speed chase.
Okay.
30 minutes before I was supposed to log off, before I was supposed to check off. Why am I stopping cars? A rookie. Why am I stopping cars when it's time to go home?
Yep.
Take off down the highway, 120 miles per hour. Got off on one of those off ramps. Hit some transitional pavement. My car did one of them things, and I slid off to the embankment and hit a tree. Hit several trees, and rendered the car disabled. And I was okay, but that was my career. That was how my career started.
Interesting enough. I mean, as exciting and as fun as that sounds, not too far from the truth. That's a lot, especially back in the early 2000s, between 2000 and say 2012. That gap, that was considered the norm, where you're coming in the job, you're being FTO'd, you go in and they're like, okay, we got to see what you got. Of course, you went through the academy, you proved yourself there. Now you're on the street, you got to prove yourself there, and that's not too far from the truth. We're like, okay, this is a hot call, handle it. And then you go in and the verbiage might not be there. You're coming in more, for lack of a better term, as a civilian playing cop as opposed to a cop in the role, because you still haven't really developed and adapted on being in that job. And then certain things happen, and it's going to go bad. You just don't know when it's going to go bad or how it's going to go bad. And then when it goes bad, you just react. And then in that moment of reacting, you kind of get mentally transitioned or conditioned, I should say, to being in that role where, okay, you're coming at me, I'm going to come at you too. You're going to act aggressive towards me, I'm going to act aggressive towards you. And then eventually it comes to a head. And I think a lot of that training is what we see today in the late 2020s or so.
Right. What made it so bad was that I didn't have a proper debriefing or a counseling from a veteran officer. What I got was encouragement, like, yeah, this is what we need. And then you get assigned to these specialized unit, the gang unit, the street drug and addiction unit. And, I ended up getting onto the SRT team. And, so you get into these high felonious situations where, we're pulling over cars, they got dope and drugs, we're working these different areas in the city that's known for drug dealing and shootings and things like that. And so your mindset is constantly in that survival mode of, a warrior mentality of, hey, I got to go home the same way I came in. And, I'm going to strike first. I'm not going to let the bad guy get me. I'm going to get him first. And so that was 24/7. And again, it was celebrated. It was like, yeah, this is what we need. This is what we want out here in the streets, because if we don't take it to the bad guy, who will? They'll overtake the city. And then and then our families and children will be at their mercy. It's like that kind of scenario based thinking that created hypervigilance that was Now when I look at it, it was unnecessary.
Right, right. And to kind of change gears a little bit, I know that you said when you got in the profession, you actually got in to make a difference, to help out the community, to be, I always said to a lot of individuals that I'm the cop that you want to show up at your situation, because I actually care and I'm going to do a good job for you. And as opposed to them talking to directly me, like you said, they're talking to the uniform in itself. So therefore, like I want to ask, when you came onto the profession and you wanted to do a good job for the community, speak about some of the positive things that you did single-handedly or with a group. But I know that you organized a basketball organization or things along those lines. Speak about some of the things that you did to help build the community and for community policing in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always had a heart to help work with youth and be a mentor to youth. And the only reason that was is because I wanted to be what I never had. I knew that if I had a mentor, I probably would have steered on the proper path instead of making a lot of errors. I got left back in the 10th grade twice behind fighting and doing stupid stuff and not being in school. And if I had someone who understood me, I believe I could have avoided all that stuff.
Right,
and so it's I became what I always wanted. And so I did a lot of volunteer work. And so we had this huge gang issue going on with Crips and Bloods, east and west side of the town, and graffiti tagging in territorial areas, and a lot of fighting and shooting and stabbings and all that. And so one of the things I thought was to introduce this area to the police athletic league. They didn't have one, so I started one. I met with a community, a guy in the community, and we started brainstorming. I said, hey, listen, we could do this police athletic league, and hopefully, this might make a dent into this gang issue, because these kids just didn't have nothing to do, and that's what was getting into this, the foolishness. So I went and got certified and brought the PAL to the Rowan County area, and I tell you what, it was one of the most amazing experiences that I didn't get any support or backing by my agency, because they weren't ready for that yet. Under the chief that hired me, he ended up having to leave shortly after he hired me, behind scandals or whatever was going on back then. And then the new administration wasn't really, interested in that PAL piece, because they were still associated with the traditional mindset versus community-oriented policing. And I always had a heart to want to do that. Well, we started the basketball league, and do you know that the graffiti, the tagging, and all that stuff went down? The crime went down in the areas, in the pockets where we introduced the PAL2. And a lot of those kids were a part of these gangs that I was coaching or assistant coach to the basketball teams, taking them to the games in Statesville and different areas. And crime was cut down as a result of it. Yet the agency didn't support it. And so I got burnt out from it, because I was the only one doing it. And it was frustrating. And that was one of the ultimate reasons why I decided at the latter part of my career to become a school resource officer, to get away from the agency and sort of kind of go work with the kids exclusively at the school.
Okay, that makes sense. It makes sense. But we applaud your efforts, because it's very much needed. I know I was a midget football coach throughout the few years ago, and dealing with the kids is a lot of fun. They get to know you on a personal level. Most times they get to know you by your first name, last name, or Coach, whatever, Coach Clee. As a lot of the kids know me as. And then when they see that you're humanized, and then when they see you, they see Coach Clee. They see Coach first, and then they actually see you. And then when you're in uniform, they're like, you know what? I may not like cops, but I know him. I know he knows my mom. He knows my dad. He knows my cousins, sisters, and brothers. He's got my number. I see him, and when he's off, he's out shopping at the grocery store, picking up stuff. Like, I know he does normal people stuff too. So I feel comfortable. Like, hey, Coach, this is going on, blah, blah, blah. Can you help, or can you make this known? Or can you have a car just ride by here, like right after the school bus drops us off, so we can get from here to here, and after that, we're cool. Simple things like that. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And, that being a school resource officer was one of my most rewarding experiences, man, because I implemented the chess club at the school, did a beautification project. I was also an assistant wrestling coach over there and a football coach over there, and just showing the kids that somebody cared about them was all they needed, because some of these kids came from backgrounds where they didn't have any male role models in the house. Some of them were being raised by non-biological parents. So these kids were dealing with a lot. And one of the things I developed over the course of time that I do really well, even still to this day, is I know how to read through behaviors, because I was that kid whose behaviors were often misinterpreted or misunderstood. I was asking for help, but I mean, I was cutting up in class, but really I was asking for help. Right. And teachers didn't know. They just suspended me or got me in trouble or kicked me out of class instead of saying, "Hey, Kareem, what's wrong with you, man? What's really going on?" And no one sat me down to ever do that. And so I learned now that when a kid cuts up, no, there's something deeper going on. They ain't trying to cut up. They asking for help in the best way they know how.
Right. Inadvertently. Yeah. Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to cut to a cartoon commercial real quick, and we're going to come right back with more of this interview I'm looking to jump into. Stay tuned. Here comes Sergeant Be Safe. Hello, this is Sergeant Be Safe, and I want to welcome all you viewers and our very special guests to Black and Blue. So get your questions ready and enjoy the show.
Film Pack.
Subscribe now.
Film Pack.
I'm over here counting my stash. Cooper, get out of here. Last time you got me in trouble with Be Safe. This is a good spot to sell my drugs.
Sergeant Be Safe, we just got a call for suspicious activity. Copy that, dispatch. Captain Chaos and his K9 Kraken along with me are just now arriving on the scene. We'll stop and check it out. 10-4, Sergeant Be Safe.
Oh no, cops! I'm out of here.
Release the Kraken.
Hey, we see your drugs over there. Stop running, treacherous Tony. We will get you.
All right. I give up. I won't do it again.
Yeah, you say that all the time.
I'm sick of going to jail.
Illegal drugs are a bad decision. Just ask treacherous Tony. This isn't a good view. Take it from me, Sergeant Be Safe. I want you to make good decisions. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Subscribe now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. For those of you just now tuning in, and for those of you who've been on, we just got done with the Sergeant Be Safe commercial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We are on right now with Dr. Kareem Puranda. We learned a lot about him. Make sure you guys check out his book. It's on Amazon. You see the his website scrolling below. He's going to discuss that momentarily, but we're going to jump right back into this interview and learn a few more things and discover some things about what's going on with his story and what's going on in society. Kareem, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you for maintaining. Hope you enjoyed that commercial as well. We got Sergeant B say he wasn't doing the Baltimore Shuffle. He was out there trying to make it happen. So
I know he had paperwork that use of force report he had to do to get old boy in custody.
Yeah, cartoon land, man. You can bypass all that stuff, man.
I'm with you, bro. I'm with you.
Well, yeah. Jumping back in the interview, we talked about a lot of things, being SRO and school coming up. Who inspired you? What you've done beforehand? A little bit about your background while working on the job, and you got praised while being FTO, not being while being FTO'd. And being put in very high stress situations and performing and being celebrated on how you perform. Do you think a lot of those situations toward the end of your career cause you to be a little bit more angry on the job, or have or respond a little bit more aggressively in certain situations?
I think towards the end of my career, man, it was a culmination of what I now understood as burnout. I didn't understand it then, but
Okay.
it was just a buildup of unaddressed stress that created my mess, and I didn't know how to manage it. In the neighborhoods I grew up in, it was a familiar feeling. It was a
Mhm.
feeling that led to homicidal ideation and suicidal ideation, in some cases, and I didn't know how to deal with it. What I did back then, the best thing I knew to do was to go lift weights,
Okay.
practice martial arts, go to the gun range and do tactical exercises. That's how I coped
Mhm.
with the thing that I didn't know how to address. Even when back in my early 20s, I went and got a tattoo with a chain around my neck and a lock, and I got this barbed wire tattoo in my early 20s. It was what I described as a undescribable feeling. I didn't know
Mhm.
what to call it, but it was ultimately me being trapped, the authentic version of me being trapped. And
Okay.
like I said, there was no value or worth here. And so all my value and worth subscribed to the uniform and the accolades and the things that I thought would bring me attention in an achieving way. I went after those things because that was the value that I didn't have in here.
Gotcha.
And when I got these things, I still felt empty. And
Mhm.
again, that also added to the burnout of like, dang, I did this and I did that, I did this, I did, and I still feel like I'm still like not happy. I didn't.
Right.
I couldn't explain why that was. I was emotionally detached.
Mhm.
Relationships, man. Back then, I would self-sabotage relationships because the main thing was fear of being abandoned. And again,
Mhm.
it goes back to my childhood trauma associated with my dad not being in my life. I mean, this thing is a crazy story that after I attended counseling, I was able to weave or
Mhm.
connect the dots as to why I made the decisions that I made. But in the moment, you don't know what you don't know, and,
Right.
and so I'm so thankful for this process of going to counseling and then eventually becoming a counselor myself and continuing to find ways to make my best better and evolve. And it's the same thing I see quite often with a lot of police officers, well, first responders in general that I work with, that
Okay.
are very guarded or don't want to look at some of the undesirable aspects of their past that make them uh, that imprison them to an ego that keeps them safe but also
Mhm.
stuck from a social emotional standpoint.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I know you explain all that in your book. Again, I'm gonna keep plugging it because I just want to. It's a good book. It's a good read, ladies and gentlemen. You learn a lot. And I know throughout your book, you were some. Hold on, something's going on with my computer here. Let me get. There we go. All right. I know you highlighted working with two other individuals that were. One has since passed on, but he wanted to be known as for lack of a better term, a kicker. A blankety blank kicker. And that's very celebrated and admired. I'm pretty sure he wanted to do his job well and effectively. But working with those individuals, in your book you explain how you get called to a certain nightclub in the area, which it turns out to be rowdy. I can't remember if you may have known the person from dealing with them beforehand or dealt with them that night, but things got a little aggressively physical that night in the club where they'd taken him into custody. Of course, I think what punches or things were thrown, and then getting him into custody, and come to find out, however long after that, you're being served with papers on being basically arrested for correct me if I'm wrong, abuse or something on the job or something like that. Can you explain that a little bit? I know I'm probably chopping it up.
No, you're good. Yeah, I know exactly. So what happened was, it's kind of interesting because this is why the situation in Memphis was so triggering to me. because that summer, it was 2009. That's those same guys you were talking about, and several other officers were assigned to a zero tolerance task force that was trying to get ahead of the crime sprees that usually uptick in the summertime. And so it was in that season, and it was in that summertime season that I had several uses of forces that throughout that assignment. And use of forces to the point where people went to the hospital. I never killed anyone, but people ended up going to the hospital to get some medical attention. And this incident that you're speaking about was an extra duty assignment that those two officers called me in, said, "Hey man, we need you up here because man, we got these gangs from this town, that town. They all gonna be in one spot, and man, we need people up here that can handle business." I said, man, something told me not to go, I promise. But I said, I was like, these are my boys. We on a SWAT team together. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go. And I went, and the night was cool until 20 minutes left in the party. Fight breaks out. Chairs flying, bottles busting. I mean, it was madness in there. And we did our best to break it up. But then there were people that were drunk and they wanted to swing on us and attack us. And then there was one guy that I had to take care of, and then his brother, which was a really big, heavy-set guy, was the other one that was interfering with the arrest. And then when I tried to arrest him, in the streets, you get this kind of like premonition where when people, it's like, when people look off and then punch you, it's like one of those kind of premonitions that I got that he was like finagling or trying to create. And so I tried to get him before he got me. And then we got into a tussle, and he ended up getting arrested for resisting obstruct delay because he was delaying our ability to arrest his brother. And it was just pandemonium. That wasn't an issue. That situation wasn't an issue. It brought attention, but it wasn't the issue. But the issue was when the SBI and FBI came in, several of the officers on the force mentioned to the SBI and the FBI, hey, you might want to look at these other use of forces he got involved in earlier in the summertime too. They weren't even there for that. But because so many of these other officers kept saying stuff, it created now an investigation into all these other use of forces that I ever been involved in my entire career. Gotcha. Now, the other thing was, from a political standpoint, I don't know, and I don't care either, but I was on the cusp of becoming sergeant. I was getting ready to get promoted, or my time was coming for promotion. And I believe that it was the effort of those who did not want to be supervised by somebody like me that they threw me under the bus in that way. Gotcha. And so after about, I was on administrative leave from August of 2009 until March of 2010. That's when I decided to resign. They offered me a severance package and I left. And I was still under investigation. So my theory was, well, if I leave, surely they'll throw this thing out, or they'll, it'll be no big deal. Nah, after 2 years, 2012, I was unemployable. I couldn't find a job in law enforcement. And I couldn't find a job at like Food Line or some local supermarket or a gas station. Even I applied there. Nobody would hire me. I was overqualified for those jobs, and I was under investigation for the law enforcement gig. So no agency would hire me at this time. And so you talk about depression. Oh man, you talk about feeling low. And my last two boys, they were born, and so I was a stay-at-home dad for those 2 years, which was because I definitely developed a strong appreciation for womanhood in that time period, man, changing diapers and feeding them and whatnot while my wife went back to work. And so, in 2012, around Christmas time, I get a knock at the door. It's the federal agent and the state agent who were investigating my case, and they had the indictment papers, and they brought 2 indictments against me for using excessive force while under the color of law for 2 incidents that were unrelated to the club incident. Okay. And around that time also is when all the lawsuits came. All the lawsuits came at one time. It's like, oh, this guy's got caught for using excessive force again. So then people started coming forward. Yeah, he did me too. He used it on me too. Yeah, me too. And then everybody lined up, and then they did all the use of forces roughly around the same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so reading the book is an eye-opening experience, because I know while working one end of law enforcement, you feel like you're doing a good job. You're making the neighborhood safe. You're making, like you said, elderly people, they feel safer coming out at
Right.
certain times of the day, or feel safe going to certain stores or whatever, what have you. And then coming full circle, when they come knock on your door and you get the indictment paperwork, you go to the booking center and you sit down right beside certain individuals, where the same certain individual or same style of certain individuals that you were putting away. And like you describe in your book, you sit there humble, you sit there quiet. You're like, I hope they don't read my stuff right in front of these dudes, because it's going to be all hell and pandemonium. As soon as they get their eyes are going to be like, what? And I'm like, wow, I couldn't even imagine living through a situation like that.
Yeah, bro, that was an eye-opening experience, man. I call it the cell experience. And I remember sitting in the jail cell. Well, actually, I did not sit. I stood in the jail cell, and I was so uncomfortable being in there with about 15 other people. Some coming from whatever prison they were in, and some people also coming in off the street. And some of them are doing that jailhouse lawyer stuff. Yo, what you in here for? And they talking about how to beat the charges or how to get around it with all that jazz. And I'm like, yo, please don't ask me what I'm in here for, yo, because I'm like, I don't want to, get it in with nobody in here. I just want to, make it through this day and, and bounce out of this place. Hopefully they'll let me out, man.
Right.
And that was the longest 7 hours of my life, man. Waiting for the first appearance. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how the heck did I get into this predicament? And when the marshals were bringing people in and dropping them off and saying, all right, good luck to you, and bouncing, and they would open the jail cell and close it, I likened it to like people throwing away trash to never remember us ever again. And I remember feeling like that. I remember like when the guys put me in the cell and they left, it was like, ain't nobody coming to check on me.
Yeah.
I'm just in here. And it reminded me, not that these individuals were trash, but it was just like the metaphorical comparison where you get put in here, you don't think about it. And I remember doing this 500 and something times in my career to other people. I would put them in a jail cell or send them to the county, and then I go home, check off, do my paperwork, and go to the crib.
Yeah.
Never think about them ever again till court or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. And I was on the other side of it for the first time. I'm like, wow, this is what people experience and what they feel like. And in that moment, I regretted every single arrest I ever made, man, because I didn't know that this is exactly what the people that ran from me, I understood. I get it. I understood why they resisted or fought and why they didn't want to go to jail, because this wasn't cool.
Got you. That's an eye-opening experience in itself. Is humbling as well. They're like, they're not physically running away from you, Dr. Kareem. They're running away from that situation, that like you said, metaphor of being just thrown away out of society. Wow.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you what's crazy. I would say when I look back on it today, I would say 95% of my use of forces came from people who were just trying to get the hell away because they did not want to go to jail.
Yeah.
Because they were giving me a hard time, or whatever the training conditioned me to think that, they're resisting, they're running, they're hiding their hands, they're concealing. That means that they're going to try to hurt me. So I got to get them first.
Yeah.
And the psychology of it, my psychology was all the way off, man.
Interesting point. So as you go through that whole trial and tribulation, the trial itself, I remember reading that you lived a couple hours away or so, where you had to commute back and forth. That was an ordeal, having a lawyer, going through the whole process itself, thinking that you'd have certain people in your corner that were not in your corner, and then have certain individuals that stepped up out of nowhere and were like, wow, I didn't see that coming, and to go through the whole process, and the nervous feeling of having your charges read to you and the verdict read to you as well. Can you explain a little bit about that situation?
Yeah, man, it was a 4-day trial, man, and everything was just so unpredictable. I didn't know what to expect. I had officers that I would have never have imagined testify against me or on the behalf of the state, and I'm like, what were they looking at? Like, what scene were they at? Because, in both of these cases, I was the only one that chased the individuals from the traffic stop to where I found them. And then everybody else came after I located them. And already we were in the tussle by that particular time. And so to hear people say that, you know, the force I used was unreasonable or they wouldn't have done that and all this other stuff, it was baffling to me, man. And then I think about some of these individuals and like, you know, how many fights did they get into?
Yeah.
How many arrests did they make? And so it was like, you know, we're talking about working a zero tolerance unit. So some of these guys were regular patrol and they would come and assist, and they were the ones talking in that way. And it was really painful to sit through that. And I just knew that, like, oh, I'm going to prison for 10 years, you know, because the way that they articulated it and the way that they were throwing me under the bus. But I also knew that I was just doing my job. I didn't do anything out of bounds. I didn't do anything over the top. I was just doing my job. I was trying to meet the resistance where it was, and you know, I was heavy-handed. Some people got knocked out. Some people went to the hospital. But nothing was ever malicious or over the top. I never beat anybody up in handcuffs. None of that stuff. It was an active situation where I was trying to bring it under control the best way I knew how in that moment, and I articulated that. And you know, thank God the jury understood the reasonableness that I articulated from my lens, and I was found unanimously not guilty in both cases. And these individuals that we're talking about, you know, we're talking about people who are habitual felons, and you know, they had drugs on them at the time that the force was used, and you know, they actively fled from the traffic stop. And so these were like, in the scope of law enforcement work, legitimate usages of force, but what they used to build a case against me, because I believe they wanted me out of the department. That's ultimately what I believe it was about.
Yeah, man, and that's a long way to go around that barn too, just to get you out of the department and then go to be federally indicted. That's a big jump. And then I'm reading on in the book. You stand to get the verdict read, and then they say the good news to you, and I know the overwhelming feeling hits you. And then to walk out of the federal building, the federal courthouse, I believe that's what it was, and then to have the marshals who have been signing you in, signing you out, they kind of come to you in a more humanic experience where they approach you. I guess I'm assuming this is in my mind's eye. They're shaking your hand, patting you on the back, saying, "Brother, we're glad that the outcome was what it was. We were here for you. However, we had to play the role because we got to wand you in, wand you out, and we got to do this. But now that it's all said and done, good luck to you."
Yes, exactly, man. You don't understand how that felt, because for the longest time, I did not feel like I did. At the time, I did not feel that I did anything wrong. I felt like I did everything within the boundaries of what my supervisors approved of and what they gave me permission to do. And so I was just at a loss for like, yo, why are they coming against me in this way? And even in that, though, I had to look at myself, right? Because again, I was operating according to an ego. And so even though I might have been legally justified in using force the way that I did, the question now, it becomes a moral question. It was morally questionable. Did I have to use force, right? Even though I was legally justified. And so that's psychology too. When I look back on it in retrospect, like, you know, I probably could have done something different. But in the moment, my mindset was on, no, I'm gonna stop this dude from doing whatever they was doing, and it's gonna be my way. I'm gonna get this done, you know, egotistically. And so, you know, it was what a journey, bro. It was a journey. That was one heck of a journey to go through from a social emotional standpoint, because I had to remake myself all the way over. Once I realized that my ego, these defense mechanisms, and these insecurities were buried under the uniform that I didn't even realize existed.
Right. And so going through that experience, it changed you into a different person. It's kind of, you were at, and for metaphorically purposes, you were at the top. This situation brought you down to the bottom, where you had to rebuild yourself into being somebody brand new. Being somebody brand new brought you to be a counselor. In that counseling, being a counselor, you get to deal with first responders firsthand. That's not easy to do, because we're a standoffish type of community in ourselves, and especially if you don't understand the type of work we did or have done, we're really not going to we don't open up anyway. We're really not going to open up to somebody who doesn't even understand putting on a gun belt or anything like that. So you have that experience, and then dealing with that situation, becoming a counselor, are you the counselor now that you wish you would have had during those moments while you were on the job?
100%. 100%. I wish I was. I am the mentor. I am that counselor that I wish I had at the time, because I would have been able to explain to me what I was dealing with, because I didn't know what I was dealing with at the time. I didn't know what the heck this feeling was. I just knew that it was a feeling that I couldn't put words to, and nobody talked about it, but everybody was operating in the similar feeling, but no one talked about it, right? And so, I would say that this experience connected me with my purpose. I had been running from the entire time, and I truly believe I needed this experience in order to mature me out of the ego that was preventing me from being the real, freed, emancipated me. And today I'm 100% authentic. You ain't gonna get nothing different from what you see here. I am 100% who I am, and only because I'm no longer operating according to the ego.
Interesting. Perfect. How long have you been a counselor? How many years?
So 2014.
Okay. And in those, from 2014, it's 2023 now, coming up 8 to 9 years, give or take. Not trying to put too much business out there or anything like that. Do you deal more with first responders, or do you deal with more general public and when you're counseling sessions?
I deal with both, but I specialize in dealing with first responders. So I work with a lot of firefighters and police officers and EMT. More police officers, but I do have my little sprinkle of firefighters in there too. Same similarities, man. A lot of crossover similarities. Many with military experience, and again, it's the emotional detachment that's fueling a lot of this burnout and frustration and depression that many of these folks are dealing with, and the alcoholism as well too.
And so dealing with, if it's a lot of burnout, emotional detachment, depression, alcoholism, or substance abuse, or anything along those lines, how do you go about getting those individuals help? If someone's watching right now, they never heard of you, and they're a first responder or just anyone, period, and they're like, I'm going through something, I don't know, and it's normal to me, but now listening, I understand that I need to go ahead and open up and talk to somebody. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, one of the things that's super critical is having a support system, right? And I didn't have a support system at the particular time, and so I had nobody to talk to. But there are resources out here, even more so today than back then. You can call the National Suicide Hotline, and there's a therapist that's waiting 24 hours on the other end of that call that won't know you. You can remain anonymous, and then they can talk to you, and you can talk to them about what you got going on, and they can walk you through some things that you can do and connect you to local resources. One of the biggest things, even when I did my doctoral study on what factors prevent police officers from seeking mental health when they start feeling stressed, and this came at the height of the suicide epidemic within law enforcement, where suicide rates were outpacing in the line of duty deaths, and they were going at an all-time high. And I wanted to understand why that was, and it turns out police officers in my study didn't feel comfortable sharing that they needed help with their administrations because they didn't trust them. They didn't trust their administration. So if we put two and two together, officers would rather complete suicide instead of asking for help because they don't trust the people that they may need to seek help from because of the judgment, the fear, or whatever it may be. And what that tells me is this: the law enforcement training is lacking mental health education in it equal to the physical health, the firearms training, criminal law, driver's training, physical tactics. You need just as much mental health education incorporated in the training so that when an officer goes through these incidents where they may have to take a life or use force or have someone attack them, they know how to debrief themselves on the scene or after it until they can find help with a therapist or someone with a peer support background or something to that effect.
Interesting enough. And I know we talked it kind of back behind the scenes a little bit and just living it. We know a lot. We internalize so much, first responders, and we're taught to because they, for one, like you said, you're celebrated on certain things to make probation. And I remember one thing, taking a PT test to try and get hired by a department that I was going for years and years ago, back in the early 2000s. I remember they said if you lose any bodily fluid besides sweat or spit coming out your mouth while during the written test or the PT test or the physical fitness test, you're automatically eliminated. And I was like, wow, and it just made me think. I was like, how many people have thrown up or done something worse? I'm just assuming it's throw up. How many people have thrown up at the end of a PT test, and if you throw up, then you're just done. So basically, it's subconsciously teaching you to self-internalize whatever is affecting you.
Exactly. And they think it's building mental toughness, but really it's setting that cadet up for long-term burnout. Because again, we're talking about emotional detachment. Let me deny what feels natural and take on the appearance of Superman or Superwoman, because that's more acceptable than being weak. That's exactly it, Clee.
Wow.
Right on.
Wow. Man, there's so much to learn, so much to do. And going through your situation, being law enforcement, being removed from law enforcement, becoming a counselor, you decided to write this book. And in this book, you highlight a lot of those situations. Tell us about the thought process that you had, and why did you write a book? Who is it for? Who are you aiming to have an understanding for? Who was it meant to help?
Yeah, that book first was designed to help me. It was it was a journal I kept the entire time I was unemployable, and I was just writing because it was my therapy. Right. I didn't have anyone to talk to at the time, so I said, let me just start writing. Right. And that was my therapy. And so over the 2 years that I was, doing the stay-at-home dad stuff, I amassed a bunch of pages. It's actually like 300 something pages. Oh, wow. But then I took out of it what I said, I'm gonna turn this into a book, because I may be able to help somebody else who is going through what I went through, but they may not know that this is an issue. And so maybe I can give them some clarity with my life as a case study. And so that's why I turned it into a book. It was a very intimidating process, because I had to be vulnerable. I was extremely vulnerable, putting a lot of my stuff out there. And I know I'm not alone, but I'm on Front Street because I put myself out there. Right. So it's easy to point the finger at me being the guy, that guy, but I also know that there are other people suffering in silence the same way I did.
Right. Absolutely. You gotta, yep. We were just getting that, Jamon, too. He says he's in the military. He says same thing. There's an issue in the military about being the macho man mentality. Right. Absolutely. And he wants to know, how do we get a copy? We're gonna get to that, but yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, the military. It's suicide rates are very high in the military as well, among veterans as well, and substance use disorders, and it's very high among them. Again, we're talking about depression, we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about PTSD, we're talking about chemical issues in the body that are created by the mindset that's been complicated via trauma in some capacity. And sometimes the trauma predates people, predates the signing up to do the work, to do law enforcement or the military. It's in their childhood, not having quality relationships with their parents, coming from neighborhoods with high crime, these things, and they carry that with them into the profession. And sometimes the things that they see or go through in the profession exacerbate those same things that they went through during their childhood.
Absolutely. And so if we got a few people on here, if they wanted to get a copy of this, how would they go? I got mine through Amazon, but how would they go ahead and get a copy of your book?
Yeah, it would be Amazon. I used to sell them through my website, but I couldn't keep up with the orders, so I made let Amazon do it, man. So I can have my hands free. Amazon.com.
Gotcha. Amazon.com. So if they put in the title and they can pull it up, I keep going. I'm sorry. Camera's backwards on my end. That's why I keep doing it this way, y'all. But therefore, you plug in this title right here, Breaking the Code of Silence, and then Cop's Journey to Triumph and Truth, right there, Dr. Kareem Puranda on Amazon. You guys can get a copy yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh yeah. So with there's a lot of going on with recruitment and retention. We get a lot of got a lot of kids on the young adults on the platform that are either getting ready to graduate from high school, graduate from college, or soon to be getting out of the military, and they come in. They normally watch the replay and want to know, is it even feasible for them to get into the career of law enforcement, period, with a lot, especially it seems like we'll take a hit after hit after hit, and then we take a hit, we come down to the bottom, we slowly work our way back, then bam, we come back down to the bottom. You're like, I don't know if I want to live this life. It's always stressful. You're always looking over your shoulder. It changes you, which is very true. But to those individuals, what would you recommend a job in law enforcement to them?
I would. I would, because law enforcement is a noble profession, and we need good people working in the profession. We need people who are connected to the narrative of the communities that they're going to patrol on the force. So no, we need people, good people, who understand from a multicultural lens how to work with people in general. I would say that, coming into this profession, it may not be what you expect at the jump, because there are going to be a lot of things that the academy does not train you or prepare you to deal with when it comes to the interagency politics and things that go on inside of the agencies and the silos and the divisions and all that, these cops versus those cops and all that jazz. And so having a mentor, I would encourage any rookie or any cadet, once they get certified and they become law enforcement officials, to join associations, which is something I did not do. Join various associations, do the research on it, and find out what associations in their area, and join it. Join FOP, and get yourself a mentor or a veteran officer who's got good principles, good ethics, good morals, and allow them to groom you. Every FTO, they mean well, but they may not be the best folks to groom you. I know all my FTOs were different, and they serve their purpose, but I didn't get an adequate mentor, and as a result, my career ended after 8 years. And if you want to retire in this field, you definitely need a role model and a mentor who's got good moral character to guide you to that finish line, because it's not an easy profession. You're gonna have a lot of you show up on people's worst days. And sometimes people will give you they behind a kiss, even though you're trying to help them. And you got to learn to let that be like water off a duck's back, and just keep it pushing and not take it personal. Definitely don't take it personal.
Yeah. And shout out to Shayla. She put the code for the Amazon link in the chat. It's there on the Facebook chat and there on the LinkedIn chat, so you guys
appreciate that, Shayla. Thank you.
Yep. And so you guys can click on that and get a copy of the book. And like you said, paraphrasing, law enforcement, we deal with bad guys on their best day and good people on their worst day, and because of that, you really have to have the willingness to want to help and be a servant in itself. And doing that, I want to kind of change the same question to seasoned vets. The C-19 virus, the protests, the riots, and things that were going on that have been continuous for the past couple of years, kind of brought a lot of officers where they're quiet quitting or just doing what they can to make it to the end or whatever. How would you tell them for retention purposes? What kind of advice would you give those officers?
It's so challenging, right? I would tell them, first and foremost, they need to connect with someone. They need to find a support system. They need a network of people they can trust, because if you've got about 10 plus years in this profession, depending upon your experiences, you may be jaded into a certain ideology that's already got your guard up, and you're like a turtle shell. You ain't letting nothing get in, because again, that's the only way you know how to stay safe from whatever dangers are out there, socially, emotionally, and physically. And so those officers that are either in burnout or made it through the seasons of burnout or just came out of a valley of burnout, find someone to talk to, man. I promise you, this is something that I did not do, which is why my mental health deteriorated so bad, because I didn't talk to anyone. I tried to go to the weight room and burn it out that way. It didn't work. All it did was make me stronger, so that when I used force, I ended up putting people in the hospital. So it didn't work to my favor. Same thing with the martial arts stuff. And so, you know, you need to find someone to talk to. It was when I found someone to talk to, the courage to finally do it. Even after I left the profession, I still had some reservations about it. But when I finally did it, I found the right counselor who was from where I was from, so that there was that connection. And yo, it was the best experience, man. And it triggered a chain reaction of wanting to discover how I became who I was. And I tell you, if I had to do law enforcement all over again, I would, and I would be so much more effective because I know myself better than I did back then.
I understand. You see that he beat me to my next question. He knew exactly what I was going to ask. He went ahead and tackled it. I'm all right with that because I totally get what you were saying, though. I do understand because you have more self-awareness of who you are. Where if you could take the mind of who you are now and put it in the body that you had back then, I mean, we can say that for all walks of life because the wisdom right there trumps the youth. And so you be a hugely tremendous officer just because you would know yourself, you would know the community, you would know how to interact with people. The verbal judo would be a little different. Not saying aggressive situations wouldn't happen, but I'm pretty sure I can almost guarantee they'd be a lot less because you would have a understanding on the person's not talking directly to you or me. They're talking to the uniform, and you can respond bac in a more uniformic manner, if that makes sense.
Bingo, absolutely, spot on, exactly. And but I look at it from a lens of it is what it is. That journey had to happen for me to happen who I am today, and I can't regret it because then it throws all of this off. So I needed all of that to become who I am today. And like I said earlier, I'm still in the discovery process of what else is there to do because everything is unfolding as we speak. The story is still being written, and I got the pen. Nobody else has the pen. I got the pen now, and I'm writing it out. You feel me? So,
yeah, I like that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, stand by. Sergeant Be Safe got some words of wisdom himself, and we will be right back with this great interview.
Excuse me, madam. You're standing still in a no parking zone. If you don't get a move on that body, I'll be forced to give you a ticket.
Hey, it's Sergeant Be Safe.
Danger! Danger!
Excuse me, ma'am. The sign says no parking.
I'm not parking. I'm just running into Dunkin' Buck to get my coffee.
You are parked. You're outside of your vehicle and you're illegally parked in a fire lane. Parking in a proper spot and taking a few extra steps is not going to make you late for work. Matter of fact, here comes the fire truck now and you're in the way. This is going to cause a problem. I may need to just have this vehicle towed so the fire department can get in here and deal with this emergency. If the sign says no parking, do as it says. Don't park there.
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. It would be my fault if a tragedy happened. Thanks for not giving me a ticket, Sergeant Be Safe. Now I know for next time.
Well, just consider this your warning, and definitely let this be the last time. I'm Sergeant Be Safe, and it may seem minor, but it's very important. Make sure you park legally. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Subscribe now.
There we go. And Sergeant Be Safe talking about those no parking zones. You know, right in front of those coffee shops when people are going to or coming from work, it's always a problem. That's neither here nor there. We're not going to bring that up, even though I know there's a certain individual who did a voiceover who does that. I'm not going to put him out there. I'll leave that alone. Anyway. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're right back in this interview. We learned a lot. We got a lot. The link for the book is in the comment section. It's also going to be posted in the header. We're on streaming on 5 different platforms. We're going to bring him back to the stage. Dr. Kareem Puranda, still right there. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dr. Kareem Puranda. Let me ask you this. Through the course of conversation, I may have forgot to ask a question, or while we were talking, it may have jogged your memory. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that we haven't already put out there? Right now, the floor is yours.
Man, I tell you, I I want people to understand that law enforcement is not an easy profession. One police officer's action doesn't necessarily blanket all police officers. Many people have a tendency to blame all law enforcement for what maybe a few or one officer might have done. And, I'm guilty of that too, right? Because I was also in that bucket of, at one point in time, called a bad apple. But more importantly, I was misunderstood. And, a lot of this stuff was taken out of context. But at the end of the day, I think I want to encourage people to give the police officer a chance, not because of the uniform, but because of the human being behind the uniform. So it's a tough job, man. It's a difficult job. You got to make split-second decisions in unpredictable moments to make sure that they stay safe, and also try to keep other people safe as well. So if you see a cop, man, just tell them thank you. Tell her thank you, appreciate you, and salute to them, because man, it's a tough job, especially in this climate.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said anything. You couldn't said it any differently. Very true. It is very difficult. It's very rewarding, but it is very difficult. You do have to make split-second decisions in a chaotic moment. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, like I said. The replay is going to be posted. The audio version is going to be posted again. This is Black and Blue. We go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with law enforcement officials either throughout the nation, throughout the world, that are either rookie season or retirees and their experiences. Some of them have businesses. Some of them have wrote books like Dr. Kareem Puranda, books plugged in the comment section, or they have training situations. So many different experience levels come to this platform. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We're going to continue to keep moving the bar forward. There we go. Gregory Foster's on here. I purchased the book and shared the link. I appreciate you. Gregory. Yep. One of the best live. Absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited to have him on here. Yeah. Good information. A lot to do. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, make sure you guys tune in weekly. Like I said, this is Coach Clee, your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker on Black and Blue. 10-4, over and out.
Like my name was Search Warrant.
Hey guys, I just got this vape from Treacherous Tony. It tastes pretty nasty, but I look cool with it, right? You guys should give it a try. Be cool like me.
Nah, you look pretty stupid. And if you get caught with that thing, you're gonna be in big trouble. Besides, I heard Treacherous Tony is that lame guy who likes to come around and hang around little kids. If you're hanging with him, you must be lame too. Come on, guys, let's get out of here before we get in trouble like Cooper too.
Oh no, Sergeant, be safe.
You kids get out of here. Cooper, tell me where you got that from.
I won't snitch.
I don't see what's so funny. Vape pens like that can lead to harder drugs and cause more problems for you. They're not appropriate for little kids such as yourself. So I suggest you do the right thing and tell me who you got it from.
Treacherous Tony gave it to me.
Tristan, I want you to take me there now. Are you?
Yes, I'm Treacherous Tony. What do you want?
Do you have a card? And why are you selling this to kids?
Yeah, I got a medical marijuana card. I don't sell it to kids. I give it to them.
You give it to them? What kind of an adult are you?
It's a vape pen. What's the big deal?
Are you kidding me? The big deal?
Get out of here, Sergeant No Safe.
Sometimes I just wanna. Yep, I think I will.
All right. I give up. I won't do it again.
That's right, you won't. You're off to jail. Put your hands up and come with me. Remember, kids, what's made for adults aren't suitable for kids. Those vape pens may look cool, but they are not good for you. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Oh no! Sergeant, be safe!
Subscribe now.